Welcome back to Between Two Racks with the Kilo Crew. This week's episode, upper and lower extremity training. See where we take this one. Let's kick it. So, when I say upper and lower extremity training, we're going to be covering neck, bis, tris, forearms, grip, delts, calves.
Like C-series, basically, things.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yep.
So to get us started, I think I want to begin with the importance of these types of exercises in training.
Like the big building block of strength training is the primary compound movement, then the assistance, and then finally the remedial. So like Alex said, these are all remedial type movements, but why are these movements or muscles important is because, well, they can either serve as pre-ab type movement to help alleviate or decrease the risk of certain injury based off of the strain of the big compound lifts, or these specific muscles need targeted hypertrophy to then leverage strength for sticking points or weak links in the kinetic chain of a big compound multi-joint movement. So they are important because they serve at basically leveraging your ability and capacity for the bigger lifts, which are the big building blocks.
And then generally, they're not fully trained through the big compound movements as well. Like obviously your bis and tris do get trained through rows and pressing, but it doesn't mean it's a complete development, because like for your bis and tris, both have a section of it that crosses the shoulder joint. So manipulating where our arm is and throughout space will change the recruitment pattern, and that mightn't be fully developed without doing an isolated exercise where you're fixing one side of the joint and moving the other.
And honestly, if you want to look jacked, you need big shoulders, big arms, and big calves.
Big neck.
Yeah, which the big lift will go a long way at building that, but like these are like the refinement, right?
They're the exercises that you see people skip, and they're also the exercises that sometimes you see people only do those in the gym. So to get started, we're going to start with neck training.
Yeah, so I mean, the neck is kind of a underrated muscle to train. It's one that, I mean, I'm just throwing a number, but I'm willing to say that 99% of commercial gym goers don't really train the neck. But, you know, neck is like the most obvious component. I don't even want to, I'm not even going into the whole like injury prevention with athletic performance, like contact sports. That's a completely different story. For those things, it's really important. But for posture purposes, right? Like people with jobs nowadays sitting at a desk on a computer all day, a lot of forward head posture, you see it all the time. So just doing stuff as simple as neck extensor work can help correct some of these postural issues. But even for avid trainees who are looking to drive more strength on the big lift, a underrated aspect of training the neck, especially the extensor, is the increased neural drive you get from stronger neck extensors, mostly because of better postural alignment and a greater ease in the signal from the brain through the spinal cord to the muscle in terms of motor unit recruitment and force potential when you're displacing the barbell in specific movement. So the neck is kind of like one of those sneaky, really high leverage, small muscle to train.
But think of all the people, like our moms have so many neck issues. Like even the women who don't like to train neck, like not that you have to use a lot of weight and do some crazy stuff with like the pulley or whatever, but just like some simple, you know, postural type of exercises for the neck could go a long way for that population.
I know personally for me, neck tweaks would be something that I would often get. And then as long as, and you do now, I have the neck in my programming, it doesn't happen.
Yep.
Yeah, and the neck, you know, like there's basically like 4 different ways, four different actions that you can train in the gym. So you have neck extension, you have neck flexion, you have lateral flexion, and then you have rotational work. Rotational work, you can do manual resistance, but if you can have the
iron neck.
Iron neck.
Iron neck. Yeah, the iron neck. I've never used it, but it looks awesome. Like, and
wait, that's the thing that rotate. You put on your head.
Yeah, you attach to a cable attachment. But I've only heard great things about it.
Well, the only bad thing I ever heard about it is if you've got a big head, it mightn't fit in there.
Oh man, I'm definitely not. Have a big head and big hair.
Yeah, but this would be like a really good way to train rotational strength. Lateral flexion, manual resistance, bands. You can have there's some pretty clever head harness out there where you have an attachment to the side to do lateral flexion with a cable or a dumbbell or plates. Then flexion work. But for us though, like our big mover is neck extension. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't want to spend too much time on neck and you want to hammer the big bang for your buck, neck extension type work to me will solve a lot of issue. So that's where we tend to focus on. The athletes, like it's more of a well-rounded approach, but Gen Pop, you can go a long way with just focusing on extension. So you can start with stuff as simple as neck support on a Swiss ball, where you're doing like short isometric contractions of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds, where you're extending your neck with a neutral cervical spine into the ball, and you're just pushing, like ramping up the intensity and pushing as hard as you can onto the ball, and then you relax for a second or two, and then you do it again for multiple reps. You know, typically the neck, it tends to be a little bit more slow twitch dominant. So focusing on times under tension of 40 all the way up to 70 seconds would be a priority. And if you're not used to train the neck, do not go too hard at first, because you'll be sore for days, and it can be a little bit of a hindrance on the rest of your training week. But neck support is a good starting point. I'm a huge fan of using the head harness and a low pulley attachment to do more classic isotonic work with a controlled tempo. I would say start with a 2-0-2-0 tempo, move on to 2-0-1-0 tempo, anywhere from 12 all the way up to 20, 25 reps is a good starting point. You're hitting that time under tension window. It allows you to build more of true concentric strength. And what's cool too with the head harness, you can do eccentric work where there's attachment to the front. You attach the pulley, like the pulley is basically at forehead level, and then you can assist the pull. So you grab your arms, you extend back, and then from the extended position, you slowly come to a neutral position eccentrically. So there's a lot you can do without necessarily needing partner resistance assisted type of work, which can be tricky. Like if you're not doing this with an actual trainer, it can be tricky because people don't really know how much
to give.
How much resistance to apply.
You got to trust your partner.
Yeah, so that can be tricky, but head harness, neck support on ball, neck bridges on ball, like once you're a little bit more advanced, are just like really good ways.
Like you even see like pretty untrained people, they can get a training effect from just being like prone on a bench and just moving with the weight of their head. So and they can do extension, they can do lateral flexion, they can do flexion if they want. Flexion's a little weird.
Yeah, and I remember like when I played college football, we had a drill like in practice where we had a helmet that some dude like glued or welded like some PVC pipe on top of the helmet.
Where is this going?
And then like he would load plates like on the PVC pipe.
Yeah.
And we'd go on all fours and do neck extension with this. On the side, do lateral flexion.
It's like a unicorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Zercher load? Oh, I can't remember. I think Westside came out with it, but it's pretty much a vest that you can do Zercher squats with.
Yeah,
So,
like the little harness
Yeah,
thing.
the harness goes out there. So it's
Yeah.
pretty much the neck extension version of that.
Yeah. That was kind of cool.
I was
but
like, you probably liked it.
Yeah. Like I think it was something like twice a week in practice as a finisher at the end. Like while you're all like out of breath and wiped out from
you're
this.
like,
Okay, now
let's
let's
do
do
our
some neck. It was fun.
Moving on from neck, we'll do delts. So also with delts, if we want to talk about like the actual structure of the delts.
So the delt structure is somewhat complex. Like there's 3 main heads of the delt, with the anterior, the lateral, and the posterior. But it's been broken down further to like 7. And like
People say more.
I don't really think you need to get too worried about all that. I think 3's good, and then just train 3 like somewhat extensively.
Kind of like the speed strength continuum.
Yeah, like there's like in the end of the day, there's only so many things you can do to train your delt, and it moves through certain motor patterns. So we're going to train those motor patterns. And then with the delt, it's probably not really a part of today's discussion, but then we could even look at rotation, so the external and internal rotators as well. But like for the main 3 heads of the delt, so anterior delt, in our training, we don't focus a lot on the anterior delt, but it gets a lot of attention through just normal pressing movements. So most times people don't need more volume for the anterior delt. If they do, because of sticking points and stuff, that's when specific exercises can be placed in. But on a general overarching balanced training program, if you're going to drop one emphasis, I would definitely negate the anterior delt and have more volume to the lateral and the posterior. Lateral delt is going to be your lateral raise variations. Like it is as simple as that. And posterior is going to be mostly our like bent over lateral raise variations, pile raise. It obviously will get some level of training effect through some various row motions, but to truly isolate it, that's great. But one of the big things that it probably starting to get more attention now, but is training the delt through the full strength curve and then changing the exercises to overload different parts of the resistance curve. So like lateral raises, definitely train it somewhat in a shortened position. Then you can go at lean away lateral raise, train it even more in a shortened position, or you can do a sideline lateral raise and train it more in a lengthened position. And doing this is just going to tap into a wider array of motor units pools and have a better overall development. Do you need to do one to optimize strength? Not really. We just want to be strong everywhere. And then you can say the same for the posterior delt. So like your bent over lateral raise is going to be more taxing in the shortened range, whereas the pile raise overloads that length in the mid-range a lot more. And then you can obviously change implements away from dumbbells to cables and affect the resistance curve in whatever way you want, depending on the cable setup.
Yeah, I mean, so like, you know, like we were brought up with dumbbells, so I love dumbbells. Dumbbells, you just have to be a little bit more clever with all the different positions, because, you know, the line of pull of dumbbells, it's always perpendicular to the floor, like that's gravity. So you need to move your body in different position in order to overload a lot of part of the strength curve. But if you have access to an adjustable cable system, that's a pretty clever way to do this, because by adjusting the height of the pulley, if the pulley is a little higher, like let's say more in line with your hand, when your arm is fully extended to your side, then the lengthened position is more overload.
Yep.
If the pulley is lower, closer to the ground, then the top position is more overload. So although the pulley has constant tension, well, the
moment arm still changes.
Yeah, the moment arm still changes. And no matter what, with a cable, with something like a lateral raise, the most force is always when the cable is perpendicular to the moment arm. So if you're doing a lateral raise and the cable is perpendicular to your arm at midpoint, well, the mid-range is mostly stimulated. But if the cable is higher and the cable is perpendicular to your arm when your arm is at the side of your body, well, then the bottom range is mostly stressed. Whereas if you're doing a lateral raise and your arm is directly above the bottom of the pulley when you start the movement, then most of the stress is clearly at top range. So that's the cool thing about the cable. It's just it allows you to play the same game as you do with dumbbells, but instead of changing body position, you're only changing cable position.
And then you have a lot of raise machines these days that I haven't really played on much, but I'm sure they've decent cams that then the resistance curve matches the strength curve, so you have more even tension throughout the whole range of motion. Well,
yeah, I've done the Atlantis standing lateral raise, and like the cam is really cool. Like you literally feel it like throughout, right? So it matches. Like no cam matches perfectly every person's strength curve, but
it feels better.
It does feel like you have that complete development. That's the beauty of the cam-based machine, though. Like it just allows you to not need to overthink strength curve overload. You stick to those. I mean, not that you should only do that, but
right. What's the purpose of the frontal plane lateral raise?
It seemingly clears up a little bit more space in the shoulder joint. So if someone's likelihood of having impingement, you're less likely to get it in that there. But correct me if I'm wrong. There was shown to have slightly less lateral lateral delt activation compared to the fully out to the side.
Yeah, but you're talking about the scapular plane.
Yeah.
Is that what? Okay, yeah. So the scapular plane, that's the depending on the source, the arm at 30 degrees to 45 degrees from the side of your body. Yeah, there's a little less lateral delt recruitment, but the advantage, like Porrick was saying, if you're dealing with somebody who has like funky shoulders, a little bit of shoulder pain, like impingement, it's a little less invasive in the sense that it frees up a little bit more space in the glenohumeral joint, so you can do your lateral raise movement without feeling any types of like clicking or pain in the shoulder. So if you're dealing with like rehab, that could be a good starting point once you're introducing lateral raise. You're still working the lateral head, but it's just not as targeted.
With delts too, I know you said it at the start of the episode how it helped you look more jacked. I feel like with girls, we always say, get a big back from your chin-ups, your big presses and everything, but delts and lateral raises also help fine-tune the physique more to get that hourglass shape.
I mean, if you look at physique competitors, like the bikini chicks, that's all they do. They don't even train their arms or anything. They want like tiny, tiny little arms just to get that like cartoon type of action figure look. Definitely builds your physique.
On a training perspective, the delt tends to be more mixed towards slow twitch. So the good thing is your overhead press, which is more compound, where like the pectoral and the triceps are involved, you can go heavy, right? So get your high threshold motor units in the delt with your heavy overhead pressing. But when it comes to isolated delt work, generally speaking, that 8 to 15, all the way up to 20 window tends to be...
put 20 reps a lot in our program.
That's why I just said all the way up to the 20 rep.
You almost did.
I mean, I like 20 reps on delt, especially with like a 2-0-1-0 tempo.
Yeah.
Taking a step back just for the listeners, back to neck. When would you say to put neck into the programs? Like on which days?
You can do it on any day, but I love to do it on upper body days in a circuit with the arms in the C series, especially if you're doing neck extensor, because you're going to potentiate neural drive, which will translate in higher output on your arm work, especially the bicep. There seems to be a greater correlation with flexion, elbow flexion, than elbow extension. I don't know why.
It's so interesting. I wonder.
I don't know why, but so I like to do it that way. So I'll go like C1 neck, then C2 triceps, C3 biceps, back to neck.
Yeah, but if you really if you need to develop neck strength and it's a priority, you should train twice a week. So both upper body sessions, because it's definitely going to benefit highly from that increased frequency.
Yeah, and like any small muscle with short range of motion that's mostly slow twitch dominant will always benefit from a higher frequency. So if we're talking about an athlete in the GPP, it could be as high as 4 times a week.
Do we want to move to tris or bis?
Let's do triceps.
Triceps.
So, you know, like you have the long head and the short head and you have the enconius but
You have
like I don't like coaches to overthink too much about the heads, because the reality with arm work is, although certain movement can bias certain heads, it's not like I'm doing a French press, so only the long head of the tricep is working. It doesn't really work that way. Okay, so, but just like we were talking about, like point of overload with the delts, you need to consider different arm positions in relation to your torso with tricep work. So like French press, so the tricep is stretched at the origin, whereas a press down, the tricep is in a shortened position at the origin. So you have different stressors, different stretch components, so different levels of muscle damage can occur. Obviously, different parts of the heads will be stimulated a little bit more, but to me, it's more making sure that you train a variation of arm position through your training phases. So arm above the head, French press, arm in front of your body, so all of the classic tricep extensions, so what people call skull crushers, dumbbell tricep extension. You could even throw in there, if you wanted, California press, although I tend to use this more as a assistance movement. And then you have like the press downs, where now the arm's at the side of your body. And then if you really want to hammer the most shortened position, you could do like kickback variations with a dumbbell, with a pulley, where now you're really in a shortened position. But obviously on a load perspective, you have much less load potential. Yeah. So that's what I would suggest. And then obviously I talk about this in program design, but also, like, just keep in mind that you want, because load potential of a movement is highly important when it comes to program design, because if you're doing a movement that allows you to use more load, it's more overall stress on the central nervous system and greater on the recovery demands. So if you're doing something like a tricep extension with an easy bar, where you might be using 135 pounds for like 8 reps, for example, as opposed to a French press where you might only be using 65 pounds. Well, why would I do this tricep extension with 135 pounds in accumulation 1? No, it doesn't really make sense on a neurophysiological perspective. So I always tend to keep the high load potential movements for the intensification phases, and then the lower low potential movement for the accumulation phases. So at least you're matching the periodization model, you're matching the output, and you're leading to a better outcome in terms of the recovery curve. So to me, on top of changing the arm position in relation to the body, make sure that you address or think about or consider the load potential with your periodization model.
Yeah. Then for triceps, hand position doesn't really do much. You're obviously going to have slightly greater load potential in neutral or pronated grip compared to a supinated grip, just due to like the ability to grip and exert force and not have as much tension going through your wrist, but it's not going to change that much on a muscle recruitment perspective. Whereas when we get into the bicep, that's obviously a big factor.
Yeah. And then we're talking about refinement, right? Because to be quite honest, the tricep is worked a ton on those big primary compound, from the overhead incline, flat bench, dip. I mean, dip, there's a huge tricep component. So you get this full stretch. So, I mean, it's refinement. So that's why for us, triceps and biceps, for that matter, in the isolation manner, as a general standpoint for most people, it's once a week. We're just looking to get some refinement. Now, if you're dealing with a bodybuilder that's a high level, now you might even want to get to the point, at least during the accumulation phase, where you have a dedicated arm day so you can really address any potential weakness. But to me, if you're 152 pounds with training age of 2 months, to have a full blast arm only day, it's a little bit of a mistake in my opinion.
Yeah. I think with you just said the bodybuilders, that's when everything we discuss in general, I know you make a lot of points on athletic performance a lot, but we're mostly about balance when it comes to programming. Obviously, if then you're talking about physique competitors, bodybuilders, then that's where it's like the specifics of the anatomy and all the little tiny tweaks come into play much more than just a overall approach to making sure everything is trained.
Why I like to use athletes as examples is athletes need balance on a strength perspective across motor patterns.
Yeah.
Bodybuilders need balance on the aesthetic perspective across muscle bellies.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with the gen pop, and a gen pop wants to look good but feel good and move good and be healthy overall, you need to mimic way more what an athlete will do. It's just the extent of how much you're doing it than the bodybuilder needs to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I tend to naturally use. Well, it's also my background, but it makes sense to me, you know.
Yeah. Moving on to Alex's favorite, biceps.
Yes. So biceps kind of like in the same line with the triceps. Without having to focus necessarily on all the little muscles and all the, if you work your biceps with the elbow position in different positions, you're going to get the full spectrum. So you can do biceps with your elbows out in front, like in a Scott curl. You can do biceps with your arms to the side, or if you're laying on an incline, then you have the elbow behind you. Now, of course, we also talked about hand position also has a major impact. So you can have the neutral grip, the pronated grip, and then the supinated grip. And then it's important to make sure that throughout your macro cycle that you're hitting all those different elbow positions and hand positions.
Yeah, like we should actually have called this section elbow flexors instead of biceps, because technically we're talking about the brachioradialis, the brachialis, and the bicep brachii, and we want to train all those in over the course of a macro cycle and make sure there's a decent strength balance and hypertrophy balance between them all. The brachioradialis, to really target it, we want to be in a pronated grip. The biceps brachii is the one factor that contributes to supination. So if we want to isolate it, we can go completely supinated or supinating throughout the motion, and then the brachialis sort of contributes no matter what.
Yeah, but the brachialis, like you'll use it, like you'll recruit the brachialis in a supinated grip, and also a lot in a neutral grip. But the problem with the brachialis, though, and the brachioradialis for that matter too, is especially the brachioradialis. I mean, but it's the point of insertion.
Oh yeah.
So it's really, the origin is really low on the humerus, and the insertion is on the forearm. And the problem, which is why I completely hate using the Scott curl as a 1RM testing measure, because the Scott curl, because of the position, because of the points of overload with gravity, most of the stress is at end range. So from the beginning of elbow flexion to about 20 to 30 degrees in, when the forearm is parallel to the floor, this is where you have the most stress on the bicep. But this is also when the brachioradialis has the least involvement, because it's such in a poor position of leverage, because now at this point the arm is straight. So the brachioradialis here has no leverage to assist in the pull. So now the biceps brachii is basically the only element withstanding that load, which is why 99% of bicep tear from the insertion occur during a Scott curl.
You see them you've seen videos. I've seen it live too, like Perry tore his biceps doing that.
Yeah, so it's, to me, the risk reward of doing 1RM on supinated Scott curl is absolutely ludicrous. So whenever we train the Scott curl as a C series, we typically don't go much lower than 8, sometimes 6 when you're really well trained. It's a very risky movement, so be really careful with really high load Scott curl, because you're subjecting the because we have the short head and the long head of the bicep. The long head of the bicep and the short head of the bicep origins at 2 different points, but the insertion, it ties in together, and the insertion, they're basically both it becomes one.
Yep.
Okay, so as it attaches to the forearm, it's like one tendon that's flexing without the support of the brachioradialis. Mm-hmm. So you're really, really at risk. So that's just one side note that I want to just be careful of Scott curl, because the stress is in the beginning of the flexion, whereas most curl, the majority of the stretch is at mid-range. But at mid-range, everything is as perfect levers to assist in flexion. So it becomes a very safe movement.
With all of these exercises, stability plays such a big role in it, and actual proper execution of it, not swinging or just moving quickly through all the movements, but you see a lot with all of these.
But even as a coach, like I remember in PICP when we teach people, like the students, how to do it, you have to be careful when you hand your client the bar. You want to make sure that the muscles are already engaged and that they're paying attention, so that you're not like just dropping the bar and then they have to like kind of catch it, and then that's when they typically tear something.
I mean, the safest, like, remember in St. Louis, like at CHP, do you remember where the Scott bench was?
Yeah.
Where?
I mean, was it close to? No, now I don't remember. Was it near the dumbbells?
No, it was right in front of the low pulley.
Oh yeah.
Because
we moved it though. It was by the dumbbells initially.
Oh, we had.
Oh, did we have 2?
We had 2.
Okay. So that was a trick question.
Well, because we had one near the dumbbells, and that was for the test.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, anyways, but the main one that, like, at least I used the most was the one in front of the adjustable pulley.
Yep.
Because a much better way to do Scott curl is with a cable attachment.
Yep.
Because yes, you're doing your arm, your elbow flexion work with the arm in front, but the point of overload, like, remember what I was talking about, like the main point of overload is when the cable is perpendicular to the forearm. So with a pulley, you're still overloading mid-range.
Yep.
So it's way safer if you want to do that.
I know that was something, even when we set up both of our gyms, that you always thought about trying to get the Scott curl near.
I wanted it there, but I really wanted the space, the free space. So.
Moving on to forearm training.
So, I mean, the brachioradialis is kind of technically almost more of a forearm muscle. I mean, most of its muscle belly is on the forearm, so any pronated type elbow flexion work will work on this. But predominantly, when we're talking about forearm work, we're talking about wrist flexion, wrist extension, wrist supination, wrist pronation, ulnar flexion, radial flexion, and then we have gripping, which it's still forearm muscles being involved. So we have finger flexion and finger extension, which these are commonly trained within grip work. So these are like the motor patterns that we address when it comes to forearm training. And then there's multiple tools, like for example, supination. I love the Thor hammer from Watson. It's a 2-inch grip diameter hammer. So then you have like a different motor unit recruitment pattern as opposed to the typical like 30 millimeter or 29 millimeter barbell. So it changes the recruitment. So you can do supination work with that, and then you can grab it closer to the weight or further away to the weight to change the lever length, so to make it more challenging or not. You can do pronation work. You can do it with a cable, which now you have a little bit more of constant tension, and then you can manipulate the position of the cable to overload more bottom, mid, or top range, whereas the Thor hammer will always be a little bit more top range dominant.
I just had a flash. Do you remember when Jake Morgan challenged you to
the axe,
the
big
hammer? And we went to the Home Depot, and I filmed Steph in the aisle of Home Depot. It was to hold it straight overhead, right? And you started like neutral, and then you had to bring it down to your head.
Well, it was it basically started with a radial, eccentric radial flexion.
Yeah.
And then you needed to lower the sledgehammer right above the top of your head.
We did this in the aisle at like 7 a.m. at Home
like
Depot.
Arm straight, like an inch above my head. And then you needed to do ulnar flexion to put it back up. Ulnar flexion eccentric, and then ulnar flexion concentric. Like you're stronger in ulnar flexion than radial flexion, so at least there was that on our side. But yeah, that was a tough little thing.
There is different weights of sledgehammers as well, so we never really knew what he used.
Yeah, I think he told me.
Yeah, I think it was specific what we needed.
It needed to
get.
be an 18. I forget, but that was like 3 years ago or something.
It was a long time.
With forearm too, are you looking with tempos or reps? What are normally you prescribing?
I mean, the problem with forearms is there's not a ton of tempo variation you can make because the range of motion is so short.
Yeah. Like if we're going pinch grip and stuff like that, there's going to be more isometric in nature, whereas for more like isotonic work and the short range motion, it's probably going to be 1-0-1-0 or 2-0-1-0 just because of the range of motion requirements, and then match the reps, the tempo to get the rough time under tension that is appropriate for the muscle groups.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to calves in the sense, like the gastroc in the sense that 12 to 15, 20 reps type of thing.
And then the placement of this within the training week?
Upper body day, again, it depends. You can, if you really want to specialize, you can even do it on lower body days where, so let's say you're doing a lot of pulling work, like let's say thick grip chins and stuff during your upper body days. Well, you might want to do your direct forearm work on lower body days, so you're spreading the stressors across the week. But if you want more of a saturation / recovery, then you overload on upper body days, which is typically what we do in the C series or as a standalone D series. Like for those who follow me on Instagram, like a few years ago, like I would always post.
Not that he's active anymore.
Yeah, I think my last training post was September 2024, I think. But yeah, like I would always do like a D series grip finisher. Yeah, it's a good way to do it, and then just make sure that you do all the patterns. Like, and that's the thing. Like with grip work, we tend to always do like finger flexion type of stuff, but don't forget the finger extension, right? Like muscles work best when it's trained as synergist, so agonist and the antagonist should be trained.
Yeah. So, it's Iron Mind that has that cool set, right?
There are some better than Iron. Like Iron Mind is just different tension, regular rubber bands. Yeah. But there's I forget the company, but there's a company that has a rubber band with actual like loops, so you can put your fingers in the loop. That's I've tried that in the past.
It's everywhere. Yeah,
for sure. But those I find better because sometimes the regular rubber band slips.
Yeah, but the thing, like I know, like most people do worry about flexion, but flexions is the one thing we train a lot of during normal strength training. So, like, if you're going to choose one, everyone should be choosing more extension-based stuff anyway, because if you have any level of elbow pain, stuff like that, there, it's more likely the extension stuff's going to give you a little bit of relief because it's going to balance that agonist-antagonist strength a little bit better. So, like,
would it still be something as a coach that you're like implementing that into a session, or are you having them do it kind of like randomly independently?
Like me, when I
do that on their own. Hopefully.
When I was a teenager, I would do a finger extension while watching TV.
Yeah. Of course you did.
But as a teenager, I also bought the ab flex too, so this tells you how.
Yeah. What type of teenager you were.
Yeah, more likely going to choose something like wrist extension than finger extension.
But, and then like another cool tool though in Ironmind, like I wrote an article like last week, and then Porik like...
It's not available yet.
Thought I made a mistake with the name, but like the actual device is called Twist Yo Wrist.
You can see why I thought it was a mistake.
Poor was like, "What the hell is that?"
He showed me it's actually Yo Wrist.
but it's kind of cool. It looks like a yo-yo. So it's two circles.
Oh.
With a space in between where a rope is going around, but you put the device flat on the floor, you attach the plate to a carabiner, and then you just basically twist.
Wrist.
So this is like straight up concentric based ulnar or radial flexion work. So it's kind of cool. It allows you to throw in a lot of volume. It's very reminiscent of the wrist roller, but for ulnar and radial flexion type of work. Cool.
It's like opening jars.
Yeah.
But a lot in the longevity realm, like they talk about how important it is to have good grip strength, and that's like a good marker of like independence. You know, if you start to lose some of that grip strength, and you can't open your jars anymore and feed yourself, then So people who have wrist issues too, it's important to train all those movement patterns. Like, well, obviously the elbow, like you mentioned, but I talked about it before, where I had a client in St. Louis where he had I had to rehab his wrists, and we spent like 8 weeks just doing everything wrist and forearm stuff. Not exciting, but it worked.
But grip strength, like we all know this, but grip strength is highly correlated with overall strength. So typically the stronger your grip is, the more likely you are to be strong overall.
Yeah. Moving on to calves. Steph's favorite.
Calves. So, basically the calf structure, you have the gastroc, you have the soleus, you have the anterior tibialis. It should all be trained. But what's interesting is each muscle have different fiber makeup profile. So like the gastroc, which is trained with the knees or the legs straight. This tends to be more slow twitch, fast twitch. So, but never forget, it's a short range of motion. So it doesn't mean you're doing like 10x2 or 8x3. You should still do like 8 reps to 15 type of range. The soleus is really, really slow twitch. So this is when the knee is bent. And the soleus, honestly, like anywhere from 15 all the way up to 50 reps will work well. And then the anterior tibialis is kind of like a mixed fiber type. So that 12 to 20 rep range works really well. And you want to train all of it. And then, just like I was talking about with triceps and making sure you keep the high load potential movements for the intensification phase where load is the main driver, like look at it the same way with calf. If the gastrocs are more fast twitch and require higher amounts of weight for lower reps, well, if you need to choose, train them in the intensification phase, whereas the soleus, train in the accumulation phase. It fits the phase. So just be cognizant of this when you're writing programs. Try to make sense of the bigger picture instead of choosing at random and then having like like
Unbalanced
three
amount,
sets
yeah.
of 30 seated calf raise on a intensification, like 8x3 lower body phase, right? It's not like you can't do it, but it just doesn't make as much sense on a neurological perspective. So just think about that. And then just like everything else, depending on the exercises, some exercise will force you to train the gastroc in a pre-stretch position, which will create more muscle damage. So if you're doing a donkey calf raise or a calf extension on a leg press with the seat all the way up, where you have that crazy pre-stretch on the gastroc, that's going to create more damage. Like the amount of soreness I get whenever I do leg press, calf extension with the back seat all the way up with the added 2-second pause in the bottom, it's brutal. So it's just more muscle trauma, more muscle damage. Obviously, you need to account for the longer recovery from it. Whereas the soleus, few sets of seated calf raise, high rep works really, really well. You don't need as much variation as you do with the gastroc, just because of the attachment of it. And then the anterior tib, like the anterior tib does not cross the knee at all, so that you're doing it standing or seated, it really doesn't matter at all. But you still want to train it because it does control the foot position.
I know we have the anterior tib machine, but in the exercise database, we show a lot of other ways to train it without the machine.
Yeah, like standing. So you stand, lean against the wall with your feet out in front of you, and all you do is lift your toes to the ceiling, pretty much. You can do that with straight leg or bent knee. The straight leg version is a little bit easier. The bent knee is slightly harder because you are working in a shorter range of motion. So you're working closer to the top range of the anterior tib. You can do it with bands where you're seated, the band's attached in front of you and pulling in. You can do it with monkey feet. I don't know if we've got that one recorded, but you could. Like, I don't see why you wouldn't. So yeah, you can train another way. The machine's by far the best way. Yeah. Like the other ones are so limited in terms of there's no way of adding additional overload in a consistent manner. So for the standing and the straight leg bent knee version, all you can do is add reps. For the bands, it's so hard to replicate the exact same amount of tension on a week-to-week basis. It's better than not training it, but it's nowhere near as good as using one of the machines.
And then what? Go ahead, Alex.
One thing that people really need to focus on is the full range of motion. It's already a very short range of motion, so you really, really want to enforce, getting the maximum stretch in the bottom position. But even more important is people don't tend to go all the way up, so you want to roll all the way up onto the big toe and not just push out on the little toe. And the same for the anterior tib. Like, make sure you get that stretch if you're using the machine that we have, that you get the stretch in the bottom position and really try to get it as high as possible. Because I've seen a lot of clients who just want to load a lot of weight on it, and then they have a tiny, tiny little range of motion. You're better off taking some of that weight off and then really maximizing that. That's
a good point, because like calf work, like people are so used to not go full range that when you, because Alex and I, like, we were just brought up that way with Andre Benoit, was such so obsessed with that stuff. It's like, when you coach people to go to full plantar flexion on calf work and they're not used to it, man, that top range, that shortened position, if you're not used to be there, you'll be crampy as hell. So you need to kind of be careful at first. But yeah, that's really important. Full dorsiflexion, full plantar flexion. And this we learned from Brian Mon, and I think it's really interesting. But the soleus, so training the seated calf raise, he was explaining in was it a lecture or
it was the NSCA.
Okay, at the NSCA convention like 2 years ago. He was explaining that at first he used to be one of those strength coaches that didn't care for calf. He just didn't see the benefit from it until he really started like going deep into it. And what's interesting, and I would say for the older population, walking, 80% of your gait when you're walking is affected by soleus strength. So like all that's going on at the ankle. So I would say that with older people, if you want to delay issues with walking, making sure that you throw in some actual soleus with true progressive overload. That's why having a seated calf machine, like if you can only buy one calf machine, I would buy the seated calf machine.
Yep.
Because it's the most painful one to try to load without equipment.
Well, and then standing, you can do
With
standing dumbbell.
Yeah. So there's so many.
them.
You can always do the calf extension on leg press if you have a leg press.
Yeah.
But the seated calf, man, like it's just so hard to mimic. So if you can have that with that older clientele, it's super beneficial because it helps pull the tibia forward.
Yeah. No, it stops anterior translation of the tibia.
Yeah, exactly.
So it which can contribute to ACL tears.
Yeah.
But and then on that point, like the gastroc, it crosses the knee joint, so it creates more stability at the knee. So if you're training athletes, it's really important to address the knee in as many functions as possible. So training the gastroc is going to create more stability around the knee, as well as training obviously the hamstrings and the quads. But you just want to have as complementary of program as possible and make sure there's no weak links throughout any of the musculature groups.
Yeah. Again, like these are detailed muscles, right? It's not like doing a few set of calf extension is going to make you jump like 5 inches higher, but training the calf through all of its function, like Pork said, will just give you more ammo for really solid joint structures, which is so important for at least athletes and even like everyday folks.
If you've been around us for a while, I don't even remember if it was one of our online clients or it was you specifically that said it, but all of these started to be referred to as the broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I love broccoli, but it was in the...
It was Abigail.
It was Craig.
It was
Abigail.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was the whole like, don't skip it.
Yeah.
You got to get your broccoli in. So it is something that we believe as a balanced program. And in our program design course, neck is not.
Next on the program.
It's mentioned.
Yeah, it's mentioned, but it's not necessarily part of the specific session structures. But we do go over how to implement it into the programming because these are all things that we always train. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you're listening, most of you may be Kilo students, so most likely your programs are balanced. But if not, I would reassess your plan and make adjustments accordingly. Does anyone have any final thoughts about upper and lower extremity training?
Do it.
I mean, like just variety. Just think variation. Don't
Always
fall for, I like the seated dumbbell curl, arms supinated, hands, I'll only do that. Like, just make sure you apply variation, like Comerford curl, like just switch it up. Like, because it's just, again, those are details type of movements. So the more random sometimes the position you train them in, the greater the upside you can have because you're targeting aspects and motor patterns and angles that you're not used to train with your big compound. Yeah. So, it's like, I think that's an important concept with these.
Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.